Colin. There's probably some clients, or Dr. Nicholas, some clients in the audience, but work at Maverick Large Animal in Erskine with Dr. Rainforth and Dr. Schultz. Predominantly cow-calf production, but some feedlot, smaller feedlots, definitely ranch horse, some dairies, not a ton, but we definitely could help people out on the dairy side. So this talk I made was on bull and heifer selection, focusing more on your own heifer selection, but there's a bit of touching on purchase strategies. And the bulls is a little more focused on the commercial side, but again, we're touching on the purebred side a little bit. So anyone purebred in the audience, if you have any questions that I'm not touching on, definitely type them. I have the chat open so I can see you. And then any of the commercial guys too, pretty much anyone, any questions, just type them whenever you have them. So bull and heifer selection. So lots of things in the outline, but not that crazy. Basically going through bull selection is largely focused on bull purchase strategies, but we do touch on some things like AI protocols especially for improvement of your purebred herds. You should definitely be considering AI in both commercial and purebred. So genetics basis, meiosis, this is a fun term. It's a very fancy Latin term for the production of sperm and eggs. People get their PhDs in this topic. We will not be doing that. We're going to be focusing primarily on what matters for your day-to-day life. If you want to learn a ton about this, go get any genetics textbook and I'm happy to sit down with you. But if you want to know what's important, it's on the next slide. The difference between heifers and bulls, there are notable differences that matter for your second year undergrad biology tests. They do not matter for you, so don't worry about it. This is what meiosis is, but the main thing I want to emphasize why I'm bringing this up. So this end is, oh, I'm losing my cursor. There we go. This end here is your sperm. So sperm or egg is at the bottom. The top, the blue, you can think of as the father of the animal you're worried about, and the pink you can think of as the mother. So all this stuff happens, all these fancy phases. What matters is that each sperm or egg has half of its genetics from its mother and half of its genetics from the father. So you're not just getting, like if you have an absolutely amazing bull and you breed that to an absolutely garbage cow, half of the calf that comes from that will be from the garbage cow. So how I think of what your replacement, either your bull purchase or your heifer selection, is passing on genetics from both. And that is extremely important for your thought process, because you are buying part of that bull's mother, not just the bull's father. And you are keeping a part of that mother cow around when you keep a heifer out of her. In other words, you are buying a slice of the breeder's herd and keeping a slice of your herd for the next generation. And this is something that I made its own slide to emphasize. When you go buy a bull, you're not just buying that bull, you are buying a portion of that herd. And when you are keeping a heifer, you're keeping some of mom and some of the bull that was bred to, but you're still having a slice of the generation that you're selecting for. And that is how we should be thinking of it. You're not just, if there's a nice heifer in front of you, you have to consider the mom and the bull that bred that nice heifer for your heifer selection. And if you go to a bull breeder, that bull breeder, you have to look at their herd and their protocols and everything on top of just the bull catalog. We're going to get into the bull catalog, but remember, for all of this, you have to really consider the breeder and want to have a relationship with them when you're going through purchase strategies. So I always like to put up just a reminder again for the duration of our talk, what our actual goals are, because we sometimes get really lost in the weeds on we're buying a bull for what. The commercial goal is to get poundage of calves in the fall, ideally without pulling a lot of things. And the purebred is to get a sellable offspring in the winter without having to spend tons and tons of money hitting it with grain and also not pulling things. Poundage of calves and sellable offsprings is maximized by live animals. So if you can gain 2 pounds, that now makes you $6. Normally makes you $2, but this year makes you more. But if you can gain a whole live animal, that is worth significantly more and offsets your costs significantly more. So throughout all of this, we want to first get live animals to fall or winter, and second, worry about the poundage of those animals. They're close second, but first we need them alive. So bull budget, this is something that I threw in kind of just for what you're actually spending when you go buy a bull. So I'm excluding feed costs, accidents, failed BSEs, and other losses, partly because feed costs are very variable person to person. If you have silage, your feed costs are going to be a lot more than if you're buying hay from the auction mart. And I'm assuming that the feed cost between bulls, this is more of you're spending more on a bull versus less. Between bulls is going to be about the same. A 2,000 bull will eat the same regardless of his EPDs. So expect a bull to last 5 years, sometimes less for heifer bulls. But 5 years, you get them as a yearling. You should have them as a 6-year-old, sometimes 7. I've semen tested a 9-year-old. They're breeding their granddaughters at that time, so I get concerned about it. But 5 is probably, I would say, very average. At minimum, your bull should breed 25 cows a year. I know there's some guys in like northwestern BC. Oh, Adobe Flash wants to update. No, you don't. Remind me later. Sorry. Okay, we're still presenting. Good. In northwestern BC that like just have a 5-to-1 ratio sometimes, and on some pastures that are just like I've been on some, they're flat, they're open. You can put 30-to-1, 35-to-1 sometimes, and still have really good success. But overall, I'd say our average that you should reasonably expect is 25. So with that, for every $1,000 you spend on a bull, this will cost you $8 per head extra a year on top of all of your costs. But if you spend $3,000 on a bull, I break it down to a head per or cost per head basis. So 3,000 means that per cow you spent an extra $24. $10,000 on a bull, per cow you spent $80. So the bull sale catalog. First thing, look at the bull, please. There's lots of going through numbers and EPDs and birth weights and stuff, but you wanna have an opportunity to well first look at the picture, but you want to have an opportunity to look at the bull himself if you can. I know lots of purebred guys do that. The more online sales we're doing, you're looking at videos of bulls, but make sure you get a chance to watch that bull walk, watch him in the pen, see what he actually looks like in person. Ask what they feed their animals. I think this is something that is more for building the relationship. You want to have that relationship with the purebred person, but you want to know what those wean weights mean. So something that was fed grain from the day it got into the creep feeder to the day it was weaned, that 900-pound adjusted 205 is not going to be what your calves look like versus someone that is not feeding them, hitting them as hard. So just chat with the purebred guy, see how fat the bulls are. You can see that when you're looking at them, but ask what they're feeding and compare that to where you're feeding and compare that to the numbers. As much as possible, look at the herd. This goes back to our you're buying a slice of the herd. So if you're buying a bull, you want to have that relationship. You want to be able to see the cow herd at some point if you can. Whether it's sale day, whether it's before sale day, chat with your purebred seller and get a look at what the animals look like, because you want to see the mom before you buy the bull if you can. Find a breeder that you trust. This is probably one of the most important things in the bull sale catalog. The birth weight does not matter at all if you don't believe it. If you're buying a bull out of a trailer in the Walmart parking lot and he says it was birth weight at 70 pounds, okay. the numbers on paper that are weights only matter as much as you trust the person you're purchasing from. So this is something that guys who have been in the purebred industry for a long time have an advantage over. They have a reputation. But if you're going to someone newer, go and have a coffee with them if they'll sit down with you. Go and walk through the herd, see the rest of the bulls, see their cull bulls, like do what you can to build a relationship with them, because that means you know that the numbers are all going to be accurate. A potentially controversial opinion, I have a couple here. For a commercial purchaser, your birth weight and your average daily gain are the most important numbers. We can get lost. I have a slide on EPDs, but the adjusted 205 is super useful. The yearling weight is super useful, but I actually would recommend you find out when they weaned and find out the birth date whenever you can, and the birth weight of those things. So we'll get into the weeds on calving these EPDs and stuff. And this will come back a little bit momentarily, but if you're going to a really reputable purebred guy and actually look at their EPDs for milk, for example, they're all great nowadays. Like back in 1995, you might have had to worry about those a lot more because there were newer numbers in the industry. But nowadays, some guys aren't even posting them anymore because they're all 20 plus for milk, say. And then consider your return on investment when you spend more for good and bad. So if you're looking at a $3,000 bull versus a $6,000 bull, will this $6,000 bull make you $24 per head per year? And if he will, then he'll make you money. That to me is, can you afford it? Line of credits. We start getting into the nitty gritty sometimes. But if you're looking at a 6,000 versus a 20,000, well, oh man, $120 a year. And that's where you have to really ask, what are you getting when you spend more? And sometimes it's a lot. Sometimes spending a couple extra thousand will get you from an okay bull to a really great bull. And sometimes it's you're spending money on genetics that you don't necessarily get a return on. So really consider that when you're spending more and when you're looking at numbers. EPDs are expected progeny differences, if you've never actually seen it spelled out. This is how much you expect any specific characteristic to change in the next generation. And this is largely leveled out in my opinion. Again, if you have a stack of catalogs, there's some that have EPDs of +7 on birth weight and stuff, but I would say the vast majority of the like more out there, like the claw ratios and stuff, they're not even reported anymore because they're good. And the EPDs on things like your milk are often amazing nowadays compared to if you go back in time. So definitely consider them. They're definitely something that we should be using, and we'll be looking at that a bit. But don't garbage a bull because his calving ease is 7. I guess I would say if everything else is amazing and a calving ease is 7, I would not write that bull completely off. With genetics, we're looking at an average. So when you have an EPD, so say you have a calf that has a birth weight of 90 and an EPD of -3. That means if you breed 100 cows, like those exact animals 100 times, you would expect the majority to have a birth weight of 87. So that does not mean when he goes and breeds 25 cows, you'll have everything come out at 87 pounds. In fact, you can have the genetic outliers on the far end that would probably actually be close to 100 pounds if you bred them over and over. That's going to be 1 in 100, but when you're breeding 25 animals, you will have some separation and some drift. You'll have the most near the center, but then you'll have some on the outliers. So this means two things. One, don't phone and yell at your purebred producer when you have a 100-pound calf out of them if you have one or two. But it also means that you should have a tight grouping around that number. So birth weight of 90, EPD -3, you should have half of your cows or your calves within 3 pounds. And then majority within 6 pounds, and then a couple on the grayed out sides. Another controversial opinion, kind of on the fact that they've leveled out in the purebred industry. Don't sweat the details too much. Use them, definitely include them, but again, don't fully write off a nice bull because his milk is +19 instead of +21. If he has negatives on something, or you have a bull that has a birth weight of 100 with a +10, then sweat that detail. But don't get into the really nitty gritty all the time, unless you're focused on one issue. So you have poor milk, let's consider that. Let's use it as a management tool, but don't be like, sometimes you get the list of EPDs this long. Really focus on what your herd needs and what these bulls are offering, and utilize it in that fashion is my opinion on it. EPDs themselves will not make a nice herd. You need to utilize the EPDs as part of your strategy, not the only thing that is included. Yeah, so any questions up to that point? Any comments too? If anyone disagrees with my controversial opinions, I'm happy to chat about them. Can you still hear me?
Is there any question that anybody wants to ask?
Not so far.
No, I guess nobody wants to ask any question.
Yeah,
Right?
that's all good. I can keep going.
You can go forward with it.
Breeding soundness examinations. They really should be called semen evaluations. The reason for that is that a breeding soundness examination, when we fill out our paperwork for it, if you look closely at it, it's asking things like how are their legs and stuff, and I get to see your bull, your bull or the purebred bull, walk into a chute and get semen tested. So they limp in, you get to see them be crappy. But if they're totally fine walking and they pass a breeding soundness exam, and down here does not mean they will see, mount, and breed a cow. It means that they can walk into a chute and I can get an electroejaculator in and get semen out of them. It is a standard in the industry nowadays for better or worse, and we will get into both of those. One thing that I think is underreported, I guess, a relatively high fail rate is expected at 12 months. So if this is improving in the industry for sure, guys are pushing these numbers, but if you gather all the purebred bulls in Western Canada, it was 15 years ago, but it's still relatively true, we find, 65 will pass at 12 months, which 35% fail at 12 months, 35% are not mature. And that improves greatly by 16 months, but you're still having a fail rate of 5% of things that just never turn out as bulls. So what this means is that 65% passing at 12 months means that a bull is born January 15th. The vast majority of those bulls, if a whole herd is born January 15th, vast majority of them will be fine by turnout for both purebred and commercial guys. But there is this thing where everything has to pass by the sale. which is the probably worst side of it. The for better is we want to make sure they're not in this 5% that are never going to pass. So it is greatly important for our purebred purchasing to know that they're actually going to have viable semen by the time they go out. But you are having this like weird 60 push to pass things by the sale date, and that can actually exclude some really nice bulls that are going to pass. Earlier passes indicate maturing animals. Again, this mattered immensely probably 30 years ago now, maybe 40, when you were having issues with cycling of heifers when they were getting turned out to be bred. Nowadays, we're having issues with heifers getting bred before, like in their first year of life, in their first 6 months of life. Like we're doing C-sections on heifers now that never happened before. So it is still important, but the main use case that it should be used for nowadays, in my opinion, is whether they pass before going out on pasture. One thing as far as the numbers, so 70% is a pass. 70% pass is the same as 99% unless you're drawing semen from a bull. So something that is truly 71% normal, 29% proximal drop, let's say, is a pass, and he will breed by natural conception as many cows as something with 99%, depending on testicle size and those things. Again, pass breeding exam does not mean a bull will breed cows. So this means he can extend his penis, he can ejaculate, and he has normal sperm. Those are the three things you're getting when like realistically getting. So this is the old put the yearling with the older bulls, so you have a little bit of coverage, because you need to make sure they actually breed. That's something that it doesn't mean they're actually going out and doing their job necessarily. Semen evaluations is an industry standard. So this is how it works in reality. We electroejaculate all the bulls in January, February, sometimes March, depending on sale dates. Retest any deferred animals before sale dates. The expectation is for a pass before they run through the ring. And this is where we're at in the industry nowadays. This is the pressure that purebred guys are put under. And this is honestly not the best way to utilize everything. So the reality is that we are testing yearlings at the worst possible time, and that there's a significant pressure put on veterinarians to pass bulls. So you have a $16,000 expected sale price of an animal that someone is wanting to run through next week that is a defer, and he looks immature. I have read semen test reports that were classified as a pass that were not fit to breed cows. So this is something that the industry is currently in the middle of, I would say. So the solutions I have for us, run any semen test by your local vet. It's both the commercial guy buying it and the purebred guy. Just emphasize, I really want these things to be a true pass, doctor, whoever. If you're a commercial guy, or you're purchasing it as an AI animal, as a purebred guy, and you want to get a second opinion, it's $80 most of the time to semen test a bull. Run them by your local vet. Take them from the sale to your local vet, get them tested, is my opinion on that, because then we know that they were a true pass the day of. Ask the bull breeder how many defers they had and compared to the weather. So if you had minus 30 degrees in January, and we test those bulls January 30th or February 1st, you should expect some fails. No matter how well they bed things, you'll have those bulls that are out there sunning their nuts, standing, rubbing them on the fence post, metal fence post, and killing all their sperm. So this comes to the next point. Don't judge a breeder, please, commercial guys. Don't judge people too hard when they have deferrals. So if they are honestly telling you they have 70% pass rate to 12 months exactly with bad weather, that's honestly exceptional. You should be getting 55% or maybe 60% if you had poor weather and a good herd. If someone has 50% and we had inclement weather, again, don't judge them too hard. Like, don't fail a bull because they deferred on their semen test, because those bulls are potentially actually good bulls that are not quite mature at 12 months. But that's okay. You don't need your heifer to be mature at exactly 12 months. You need your heifer to be mature at 16 months, 15 and a half months. So for me, the reality of the semen evaluations on the purebred sale side, there's been push and pull in the industry on this, but I would say for the purebred guys, don't get too upset if you have defers at 12 months. And for the commercial guys, don't get upset at the purebred guys if they're honest about their deferred animals. Our best producers, our people that have the best results, they still have defers, and they'll be open about which ones. Oh, we're not selling him until he's fully good. Insurance is a personal opinion, and I will mostly leave it at that. The notes on insurance, one thing is ensure you understand your contract. One thing that kind of actually blows my mind a little bit is I'm a person who reads every contract I'm given. Like when I bought a used car, I read through all of it to look through everything. You're purchasing a used car, price of things, or a new car sometimes. Read through the contract extensively, and honestly consider getting a lawyer to look at it if you're spending enough money. So if you're spending $35,000 on a bull to go to an AI facility and you're getting insurance on that bull, a lawyer consult is not out of the question. So things like what does and does not warrant a claim is hugely important, because we run into sometimes people who have an animal that is marginal on a semen test and they don't get a claim immediately, even though they have to put the bull out next week. And that's because they want retests and they want to double check things, and it's by the contract. And if a broker tells you something that is not in the contract, get it in writing. You'll maybe get some pushback on this sometimes, but again, if you're spending $10,000 on something and you're going to spend an extra $2,000, $1,800, 18% is pretty standard, $1,800 per year for that insurance on it. That's something that if they're going to say, oh, we'll cover X, Y, Z, I would recommend getting them to write that down. And if they won't, then I would don't assume it is going to be 100% honored, because the insurance people I've worked with have all been really nice and really good. But it's just you're dealing with big dollars sometimes. So get things in writing. Other options other than a bull or using your bull in other ways, AI protocols are an effective alternative, and this is where the purebred guys' ears should perk up. If you're wanting to improve the genetics on your purebred herd, I think you should be AI. No, really, the commercial guys, there's a good argument for it depending on your facilities. But in the purebred side, I believe the straw costs and the cedar costs are worth it for the improvement in genetics you get. Drawing from your own bulls is an option. So there's 3 types of AI straws. One is international, one is national, so Canadian, and then the third one is self-use. So we can actually at Maverick now, we can draw from a bull to give you self-use straws. They can't be sold, they can't be given to other people. But if you're an owner or a part owner of a bull, you can get straws to use yourself. So for the purebred guys, if you buy a very expensive bull, I would honestly recommend, if you have a tank, to get him drawn and use that as an insurance. Even if you have an insurance policy, this is your second insurance policy. You have a tank of 50 straws from that bull, 70% breed rate, you got a year and a half of calves off of them, or conception rate. So something that we probably should use more as an industry. There are really good protocols. You can get really nice animals without spending tens of thousands on the really high cost bulls that are maybe not going to pay you off as much with your commercial herd. But you can go by Strauss from and introduce those genetics into your commercial herd. So one thing, there are some people out there, some of our clients do have Strauss for sale. So for the commercial guys in here, check with your purebred producer, purebred by the guys you normally go to, see if they have Strauss for sale and see what they are. If they have a nice bull that throws nice calves that you can't quite afford or don't want to spend that much in the sale, see what they'll do and see what they have on hand. Even you might be able to walk away from a sale with a business card and then get them the next week. And there are companies, there's if you just Google Western Canada beef semen straws, there's 2 or 3 companies. Most of the straws at the companies are $30 plus, but if you're looking at the cost of implanting everything is around 70-ish, with seeders and drugs and time, assuming we get paid for time. Very funny. But definitely consider it. Consider implementing it into your herd, especially if you have good facilities, and consider utilizing your own expensive bulls more extensively and introducing genetics that you might not otherwise be able to pencil out as actually providing that value for the extra cost. Breeding your own bull. The main thing with this is that you take on all the risk. And I'm sure the purebred people in the audience are intimately familiar with a bull that they've fed that just never passes or never gets there. And then you're selling them for meat, and you've put all this feed and time into them. Inbreeding will emerge as a concern if done consistently, kind of. We actually could get in you could make a whole presentation on inbreeding effects in animals. But mainly, if you're going to be doing this, I would strongly recommend that you either get an embryo and utilize embryo transfer technologies, or get semen from somewhere that you don't normally purchase from. If you're going to be just breeding a cow to a purchased bull and keep that, and then keep him for his lifetime, and then do that a couple times, you do start to run into inbreeding concerns. How concerning would be very up for debate, but it definitely exists as a concern or problem. Yeah, so that's my thoughts on bulls. 2 probably controversial opinions, maybe 3 if we count the semen testing side of things. Any questions again? Or comments or debates? Do we want to get in a...
Thank you so much, Colin, for this amazing presentation. If anybody
we're not done.
Yeah, for the first presentation.
Okay, yeah.
Anybody wants to ask any questions?
Yeah. Where's my Zoom? People can people can type, right?
Yep.
No questions? Okay, perfect. Oh, Michaela's watching. Hi, Michaela.
Yeah, no questions. Yeah.
Okay, well, no questions. Think on them. I am happy to discuss any and all of this. So heifers, next generation of ladies. This is your, I put here cheap control, free-ish control. It's not really cheap or free. Every heifer you keep is a heifer you don't sell. So it's lost cash flow, lost money on the front end. And the number kept depends heavily on your open rate and your herd goals. So how expensive they are depends on what you're trying to do. If you're trying to grow, you're keeping more than 10%. If you have exceptional pregnancy rates, you're keeping less than 10%. 10% is what I would say is probably the average out there. If you have 200 cows, you're keeping 20 heifers, just because that tends to replace. But I've seen large varieties of this. So really, I guess just compared to what you're trying to do. Buying heifer replacement heifers. So this is a very similar thought process to your bull selection. So you are looking at the herd, you're looking at the heifers, you're looking at the animals above them, and really looking heavily at them. Look at the heifers, look at the herd, look at what they're doing for protocols. There's some really nice bred heifers out there that are going to be first choice or early choice. They're as good as their replacements. And there's some not so nice heifers that run through auction marts because they're the scrubby last ones that someone doesn't want. So this is an area where I can say you can actually get into probably more trouble than your bulls, depending on where you're getting them from. If you are buying a yearling, so you're getting them off pasture, I would honestly insist on a pre-breeding evaluation at that point. We're going to get into pre-breeding palpations at the bottom or end of the heifer section, but this will cull more than you need to. But if you're buying them, I would say that, or again, you have a relationship. If they never cycle, they're preg tested as underdeveloped, and that person will guarantee that for you, then you're totally fine. But if you're buying them from someone you've never heard of before or don't know, I would suggest you make sure that that animal has a uterus, A, and B, is cycling or going to cycle. Be 100% certain on what vaccines have been given and when. Really good purebred guys will have this written down almost to the hour, definitely to the day or week. Less organized ones will have an invoice from before branding, and that's honestly totally fine. You just want the brand name and what vaccines were given at what times. If a bred heifer, just be super comfortable with their bull selection. If you are buying, you have no control, so you have to trust them that they know what they're doing when they select a heifer bull, which we at Maverick are the ones that get to see the wrecks with some bred heifers sometimes, because the bull is 10 pounds too big. Please, there's lots of pleases here. Don't buy random bred heifers from auction marts without knowing who's selling them. If there's any auction mart people, they might not like me for that, but at least know the person that is the seller and at least know who they are. A lot of auction marts, you'll have your ear to the ground on these, but this is where I see people getting into wrecks. You get something, I ask you what were they vaccinated with, we have no idea, and they're honestly, we talk to you a lot sometimes, and you get a really big calving bill with these sometimes. So this doesn't mean don't buy from auction marts, doesn't mean don't buy from auction mart sales. It just my opinion on it as the person who cuts them off the side. Know the name of the person you are buying when you buy from an auction mart. Basics of a heifer life cycle. So this is some of the minimum requirements for a heifer. So a heifer should, at a minimum, be 80% of her final weight when she calves. So if you look at the cow, your cow is, we used to say 1,400 pounds or 1,500. They're really 16 plus most of the time now. But 1,600 pounds, she should be 80% of that when she calves for the first time. This is assuming she's at a body condition score of 5 out of 9. So if you have this is basically, we want her 80% of her frame. So if she's 60% of her frame and she's fat and she's 1,200 pounds, that doesn't count. That is actually going to be worse for you because you're going to have fat in the birth canal. And you're going to have a smaller heifer that has a smaller birth canal in the first place. So 5 out of 9 means you can't roll up beside her and count every rib. You can see some of the ribs in the middle, and there's fat cover on either side of the tail head. So they're not bulbous, but they're not divoted at the tail. There are some other indicators as far as the spine and how to feel it and all that. But really, these are the two main ones that you go with at preg test time, because you're looking at them as they come in, and then you're looking at their fill in the back. You should not have a giant fat thing that will give you problems. And obviously, anything skinny, they're not ever going to catch up. So I was chatting with Michaela, actually, she's a tech at Maverick, about my expectations for a heifer calf born next week, March 1st, should be able to calf March 1st, 2025. So what I mean by this is she's born now, she goes out, grows with mom, you keep her, you breed her the next year, you breed her 2024. She should be able to calve the same date as she was born, but 2 years later. Why does this matter? This matters immensely for your second calving, second calver, so breeding her back. So starting your heifer right will greatly improve your second calver pregnancy rates. And by that, I mean the second calvers are going to consistently be your worst. So a heifer calved, you're trying to breed her back. They're consistently the worst pregnancy rates of everyone. Everyone will have this as their worst group. If they're calving way later, your turnaround to get them back into your herd calving window is much tighter, and that's really hard for them. So a heifer, after she calves, she needs to get her uterus sorted, she needs to milk a calf, and she needs to get pregnant and maintain that pregnancy and finish growing this last 20%. So what that means is that the less time you give her between calving and rebreeding, the more opens you will have. So this comes into my heifer selections. So your heifer selections, I consider there to be 3 call points for your heifer selections. The first calling point is during calving season. And one option for this, if you have really good paperwork, is to write all these down. If you don't have good paperwork, get a bright red tag, pink, purple, I don't care, something you don't normally use color-wise. Any heifer you don't want to keep gets this tag. So this idea of if she's born March 1st, she should be able to calve March 1st, 2 years later. If she's born April 30th, 31st, May 1st, end of April, early May, you can't fully expect her to calve at the beginning of your season than when she comes back in. So if she's born on April 30th, you should expect her to calve April 30th. So what that means is anything born in the second half of your calving season, like any heifer calves hitting the ground this year, they will struggle. You're putting them behind immensely. You're putting them behind 60 pounds at minimum, but you're putting them behind 30 days of maturation, 30 days of everything. So if you want a fast and loose rule, if you're calving March 1st to May 1st, then April 1st, any heifers born after that, red tag in their ear. Don't look at them again. Unless you're having a weird calving season, you should have half of your heifers already. They got a cycle and a half. If you have 100 cows, you should have at least 50, 60, 70 on the ground by then. Should have 70 on the ground. Don't keep anything from a C-section. We're going to get into this slightly, that you kind of can if you're having a bull wreck, but if you cannot keep things from C-sections, don't keep things from C-sections. That is selecting for calving problems. Don't do it. Don't keep anything that should have come out but required a pull. This is not to say that every pull needs to be called. And what I mean by that is if it's the 2 in the morning, you just want to go to bed, you put chains on, you yank it by hand, that's a pull, that's classified as a pull. But if it's you're tired of watching her and you just want to be done with her, then you can actually keep that heifer if there's tons of space and tons of room. If you are getting the calving jack out, or you are bringing that cow into the clinic, don't keep that calf. Like your calving ease will have issues because you're selecting for calving problems. Don't keep anything from a crummy mom. This is something that we sometimes see. So the calf is beautiful, the mom is crappy. get rid of her. She will be crappy eventually. If mom can't keep her bag tight, if mom can't keep milking, kind of back to the bull selection, it doesn't matter what the bull's milk is. If mom has no milk, but the calf looks nice, you are selecting for poor milk production. So get rid of it. Don't keep females twinned to a male, also known as free martins. 93% of these will not have the bits. The 7% that have a uterus and ovaries will have poor growth or poor reproductive success, poor reproductive growth. Be very cautious keeping anything that had signs of pneumonia or severe pneumonia. The problem with pneumonia versus other calf illnesses is that pneumonia will scar the lungs and it will set calves behind significantly. I was going to put a whole bunch of references on this, but you'd have the rest of the slide filled with references. This is super clear in the dairy world, less studied in the beef world, but we do know it is a thing in the beef world. Why I say be cautious keeping anything is pneumonia is a very broad diagnosis. So you'll have some things that are just breathing a little hard that you treat with some Zolaris or Resflor, they turn around, they get better immediately, versus the thing that is not coming out its nose at 2 weeks of life, scours coming out the back end, never really catch up. Those things should not be kept as a replacement, because they're going to be the crummy 800-pound heifer at calving season with a uterus or a pelvis this big that nothing fits through. So it's not a full cull requirement, but it is a cautionary tale, I guess. What I don't consider to be a 100% first cull, calves out of heifers in specific circumstances. We're making very general rules. So you probably shouldn't keep calves out of heifers. They're always going to be a little bit behind. But the next slide will have that. Very mild hernias. So if something has a mild hernia, it is likely, research is a little less clear on this, that it is repeatable, but it is likely to be repeatable, but a mild hernia is not going to kill your calf. If you have 40, you need to pare down to 30, something at a hernia, easy choice, get rid of the hernia. But if you have something that has a mild hernia and she's from a great mom, great bull, great everything, I would keep that heifer. Every single pull, I said getting to the short leg, we got to it already, but if you just want to be done, the cow's making good progress, you just want to go to bed, you pull that calf, they mother up great, not necessarily a first cull. Mild to moderate scours do not scar anything in. They do put calves behind, but a mild scours, depending on the timing, depending on the calf, they will be set behind. A mild scours is one that you see scouring, that's not a milk scours, that you treat because you can catch it, but not because it needs it. A moderate scours is one that needs treatment. A marked or severe scours is one that cannot stand anymore, or can only stand with assistance, that needs to be brought into the clinic. So I would say any scours that come into the clinic, you should call that heifer. Don't keep her. Scours that are a little loose, running around on pasture with its tail a bit dirty, and you can get it resolved really quickly, they are going to be a bit behind, but I would count that against the heifer, but not put a giant red tag in her. And recovered navel ills depends again on what's happening. Depends on your herd. If you have 50 heifers again that you're picking from, and one had navel ill, a shot against her probably means she didn't get great colostrum. Could have meant that she got dumped in a crap puddle and mom didn't lick that part of her off. So I use this as a point against the heifer, but not the absolute must cull them. Second culling point is your branding or summer processing. I put branding, but some guys don't brand anymore. Don't even look at the calves born third cycle or later, second half. If they have a bright red tag in her, doesn't matter how nice they look, how much they recovered, that heifer will be behind, and you can probably find as nice of a heifer in the front half. What will happen, what I see happen, is this calf that was born third cycles from a great mom, and we want to keep her genetics. Just recognize you're setting that behind. If you're going to look at them, know you're looking at a open second calver a good portion of the time. So only look at calves from heifers under two circumstances as a general rule. You're attempting to rapidly grow your herd and you are recognizing the risk here, or they're newly added expensive genetics and you are trying to rapidly implement them into your herd. Again, you're not going to 100% have open things. You're not going to 100% have open second calvers. You're just taking a higher risk. And the risk is you have an open thing, open heifer in the future. So if you are willing to take that risk to implement the expensive genetics or the rapid growth strategy, you'll just potentially have a higher open rate. So this is what I initially put for the not pulling every reel or culling every real pull. If it's a bull rec, you are getting those big bull genetics in, which is an issue. But if you need to select heifers and you had a bull rec, most of the time my bull recs are in your heifer population. So this is more if you have like a cow bull rec, which what are you buying? go back and redo the first half of this, I guess. But you can keep some of these. If you don't have to, don't, honestly. And I would also say, if you have this point where you had a wreck, you had a whole bunch of things, consider not keeping as many this year and having a bit of a shrink over the next couple of years. Consider buying some things, like sell all these heifers, buy some replacement bred heifers. So there are some options. It's more just if you had a bull rec somewhere in your cow herd, you can consider the risk and make your own evaluation. I would probably call them if you want my opinion. Third culling point. This is where you have to fall out of love with your heifers. This is where you've decided you've cut them down significantly and you're looking at your heifers at weaning time. Fall out of love with mom, fall out of love with her. If you have something that's 50 pounds behind everything, she will be 50 pounds behind. She will grow some, but she will struggle to breed back. A heifer's average daily gain versus her mom's weight are the most important factors in my opinion here. So you have a cow that's 2,000 pounds, you have a heifer that's 700 pounds, and she came out at 100 pounds, that thing's gonna not grow great over your winter. She's gonna be behind everyone all the time. And these are the runty ones. These are the ones that are calving out at 1,000 pounds that you bring to us because you can't fit a small calf through your pelvis. So third culling point, be I guess honest with what you're looking at, and don't be too in love with any single animal, or again recognize you might have a higher second calver open weight rate. Vaccines, more touching on this since we've been talking about selection, but if you're on a modified live protocol, a heifer has to receive it twice before you expose a bull to them. Heifers will get hit harder by the vaccine if given close to turnout. So the label says 21 days. Generally, they will for sure need that 21 days, and I would recommend a little more if you can help it. So generally, you're giving it brandy time, and then fall or over winter. Talk to us. Talk to your vet. Talk to us about what exactly when to fit it in, when it works for you. Pre-breeding palpations. This has some controversial thoughts out there, I would say. For selecting your own, it's of minimal use in their first year. So if you're going to run through all your heifers at fall to use it, you're going to excessively cull for lack of culling or cycling, and pelvic measurements pretty much always useless, but absolutely useless here. Something with a big pelvis might stop growing. Something with a small pelvis might keep growing. Better indicator for pelvis is mom's pelvis, and best indicator for pelvis is her pelvis, but we don't get that, so use mom. It is of questionable use, in my opinion, immediately before turnout. And why this is, so say you have 25 heifers, you have one heifer bull, or you have 30 heifers to pick from, or 27 heifers, and you want to put 25 out. You have one heifer bull. We might cull 1 or 2 from lack of cycling, but where do you put them? You have to have a plan for them, because if the plan is to just put them out on pasture with the bull, then why did you spend $5 a head to pre-breed palpate them? If the plan is to implant them and put them out onto a separate grass pasture, and you have a bunch of excess and stuff, then for sure you can use it. It'll help you. But generally, I would say pick the heifers you want. If you had a good selection initially, the majority of them will be cycling. The majority of them will be good to go through. Like the vast majority, you'll have 90 something percent, 95, 98% cycling. It is of use when buying replacement heifers. Again, if you don't have as good of a relationship and aren't in as close communication with the purebred seller. So it has its place. We sometimes will do these and they get put out with a bull and then they cycle, or put out with a bull a month later and then they've been cycling, and it's like, you can spend your money, but why? Versus if you're going to be implanting things, it can be useful. If you are picking some of the later things or things out of heifers, those type of strategies, then it can be useful because you're maybe pushing the numbers a little bit. But if you're only selecting from the first half, you're following all these general recommendations where you didn't keep the runty pneumonia thing, you should have your heifers cycling. So don't spend your money here. Spend your money somewhere else. Implants. Implants are great. You should be using implants in your steers. You can use implants in your heifers. Do not implant heifers that you are going to keep unless we tell you otherwise. And that will be virtually never. This is bolded and underlined and italicized because I prig tested for someone and we had 90% open rate in their heifers, and we figured it out that they were implanting everything from fall, the previous fall, and that kicked the heifers in the ass, and it put them so behind reproductively. And the bull did his job. He bred all the ones that were good to cycle probably, but don't do this. This costs you lots of money. Do implant your steers. Do implant the heifers you're not using as replacements. It will make you money. The papers are pretty clear on that. You do get poundage, especially on good grass years, out of implants. They're pretty cheap. They're something good to add out of processing or branding. Don't do anything that you might consider keeping as a replacement. So it can be a good time to select, because then you are committed. And if you're keeping anything over winter, like anything backgrounding, for sure you should implant. Like you should implant anything you have control over the feed wagon over, but nothing that you want to keep as a replacement. Some additional resources that are out there that are useful. Beef Research Council, they have tons of posters, calculators, and research in general. They have some really good ones on like colostrum management and stuff. They have some really good calculators on feed costs, some good calculators on return of investment, bull costs. I believe they actually do have a bull cost calculator somewhere. So check them out. If you just Google them, their website comes up and it's really easy to navigate. Purebred associations definitely have a lot of resources out there. They'll tell you if you want a specific breed, they'll tell you where to go. They will, if you want to discuss EPD averages and such per breed, you can, I'm sure, get someone on the phone or over the internet or over email that will walk through any questions you have. And again, your purebred producer, purebred breeder, the person you are purchasing animals from, is a great resource for how they can help you. So if you have, I guess I should put vet too, so vets after this. But if you have a specific problem you're trying to navigate and you want to get a specific bull for that, give them a ring before the sale and say, hey, what do you have? What breeds or what bulls in here will get me milk because I'm having milk issues? Which ones are best for feet because I'm having to trim everything every year and it's annoying me? Talk to them, use them, and then vet. Your vet can be a great resource, either us or anyone else. If you have any questions about any of these things, you want to really get into the nitty-gritty on any of the topics today, chat with your vet about it.